Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 daily local news update. I am Carmelita Jones in Los Angeles with your number one top news. Watching the news headlines, now details at 2:30. Queen Elizabeth II missed out on the Remembrance Sunday service in London to pay tribute to Britain's war dead because she sprained her back, Buckingham Palace said Sunday. The service is one of the most important events on the 95-year-old monarch's calendar and was meant to be her first public appearance after taking a few weeks off to rest under doctor's orders. British media reported that the back sprain was not believed to be related to recent medical advice to rest that prompted other cancellations. The Queen, having sprained her back, has decided this morning with great regret that she will not be able to attend today's Remembrance Sunday service at the cenotaph, officials said just hours ahead of the ceremony. Her Majesty is disappointed that she will miss the service. The Queen spent a night in London Hospital last month after being admitted for medical tests. This was her first such stay in 8 years. On October 29th, the palace said that she had been told by doctors to rest for 2 weeks and to only take on light duties. She canceled plans to attend the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow, Scotland, but sent a video message. Officials stressed at that time that it, quote, remains the Queen's firm intention, end quote, to be present for the National Remembrance Sunday service. On Thursday, Buckingham Palace said the monarch planned to watch the ceremony at the Cenotaph War Memorial in central London from a balcony as she has for several years. The Queen served in World War II as an army driver and mechanic and is the head of Britain's armed forces. She attaches great importance to Remembrance Sunday, a solemn ceremony to remember the sacrifices made by the fallen servicemen and women. The national service, which follows Armistice Day on November 11th, is traditionally marked by wearing of poppies and the national 2-minute silence observed at 11 a.m. On Sunday, other royals and politicians led the ceremony in London's Whitehall with hundreds of military personnel and veterans lined up around the Cenotaph Memorial. It was the first time the event had returned to normal since the pandemic began. After Royal Marine buglers sounded the last port, Prince Charles, 73, laid the first wreath on the Queen's behalf, as he has done since 2017. He was followed by other royals and the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Dubai's biennial air show opened Sunday to a world still reeling from the pandemic and an aviation industry hard hit by the coronavirus, but on the mend. Boeing and Airbus have traditionally been the stars of the aviation trade show, competing for multi-billion-dollar Gulf-based airline purchases while hammering out final details minutes before back-to-back press conferences. This year, however, the 5-day exhibition is expected to be much more muted than in past years due to the subdued state of flying and travel amid the COVID-19 pandemic and delays in the global supply chain that have affected plane manufacturers. Dubai went into a brief lockdown last year, but has since swung open its doors to vaccinated and unvaccinated travelers as it tries to lure back leisure and business spending in hopes to draw visitors to its multi-billion-dollar Expo 2020 World Fair site. The air show in Dubai is one of the first major aviation trade shows to take place since the start of the pandemic. The tarmac outside the exhibition hall showcased the latest innovations in commercial aviation, as well as global arms trade and the continued push by companies to sell their hardware. Boeing brought its new 777 9 passenger jet from Seattle in the longest flight to date for the 777X as it undergoes continued tests and awaits regulatory approval. Boeing says the aircraft will be the world's largest and most efficient twin jet engine. The Middle East's largest carrier, Emirates, has ordered 126 of the 777X, but the Dubai based airline has expressed frustration with delays surrounding its delivery, which is not expected before late 2023. Boeing continues to face scrutiny for its 737 MAX aircraft, which was grounded globally until recently following two crashes that killed nearly 350 people. Boeing had to make changes to flight software that played a role in the crashes, paid an undisclosed sum to airlines that were affected by the aircraft's grounding, and has settled dozens of lawsuits filed by families of passengers killed in the crashes. Airbus took journalists through an A320neo, which had been converted to a luxury corporate jet replete with a large bed, walk in, shower, and sprawling sitting area with couches and coffee tables. The son and one-time heir of apparent late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi announced Sunday his candidacy for the country's presidential election next month, Libya's election agency stated. Saif al-Islam has submitted his candidacy papers in the southern town of Sabah, the agency said in a statement. Gaddafi's son was captured by fighters in late 2011, the year when a popular uprising toppled his father after more than 40 years in power. Muammar Gaddafi was later killed amid the ensuing fighting that would turn into a civil war. In a video released by the elections office where he registered, Saif al-Islam addressed the camera and said God will decide the right path for the country's future. He wore a traditional Libyan robe and turban and spectacles. Saif al-Islam was released in June 2017 after more than 5 years of detention, and in July told the New York Times in an exclusive interview that he was considering a run for the country's top office. Libya is set to hold presidential elections on December 24th after years of UN-led attempts to usher in a more democratic future and bring the war to an end. The long-awaited vote still faces challenges, including unresolved issues over election laws and occasional infighting among armed groups. Other obstacles include a deep rift that remains between the country's east and west, split for years by the war, and the presence of thousands of foreign fighters and troops. Gaddafi, the dictator, had 8 children, most of whom played significant roles in his regime. His son, Mutassim, was killed at the same time Gaddafi was captured and slain. Two other sons, Saif al-Arab and Kalmis, were killed earlier in the uprising. Another son, al-Sadid Gaddafi, was released in September after more than 7 years of detention in the capital of Tripoli following his extradition from neighboring Niger. At the main hospital in Romania's capital, the morgue ran out of space for the dead, and doctors in Bulgaria have suspended routine surgery so they can tend to a surge in COVID-19 patients. In the Serbian capital, the graveyard now operates an extra day during the week in order to bury all the bodies arriving. For 2 months now, a stubborn wave of virus infections has ripped mercilessly through several countries in Central and Eastern Europe, where vaccination rates are much lower than elsewhere on the continent. While medical workers pleaded for tough restrictions or even lockdowns, leaders let the virus rage unimpeded for weeks. Quote, I don't believe in measures. I don't believe in the same measures that existed before the vaccines, end quote. Serbian Prime Minister Ana Brnabić said last month as the Balkan nation sustained some of the worst daily death tolls of the pandemic. Quote, why do we have vaccines then? End quote. Experts say fumbled vaccination campaigns and underfunded, mismanaged health systems set the stage for the latest outbreaks, which gathered pace as the leaders dithered. Some are acting now, but many doctors say it took too long and is still not enough. Many governments in the region are facing elections soon, and that no doubt made them reluctant to force people to get vaccinated or impose unpopular lockdowns. Even in the former communist nations that once carried out mandatory inoculations without hesitation, or where leaders were quick to introduce closures earlier in the pandemic. But politicians' failure to quickly heed cause of medical community has likely undermined an already weak trust in the institutions in countries where corruption is widespread. Misinformation about vaccines has also found fertile ground amid the broader distrust of authority, which has left countries stumbling through the latest surge with few protections. While nations around the world have struggled with resistance to vaccines, many in Central and Eastern Europe have particularly low rates for places where supply is not an issue. Bulgaria and Romania, both in the European Union, have fully vaccinated about 23% and 35% of their populations, respectively. Bosnia and Herzegovina have just 21% fully vaccinated. A short break from the daily English news of Millennium News 24/7. Stay tuned.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Oh, it's time now? Okay. Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 daily local news update. I'm Carmelita Jones from Los Angeles, California. The Qatar based satellite news network Al Jazeera said Sunday its bureau chief in Sudan was detained by security forces a day after mass protests were led across the country against last month's military coup. The network said on Twitter that Sudanese forces raided the home of El Musalami El Kabashi and detained him. The development comes after security forces fired live ammunition and tear gas Saturday to disperse protesters denouncing the military's tightening grip on the country. The Sudan Doctors Committee said a 15-year-old protester died Sunday of gunshot wounds to his stomach and thigh, raising the death toll to 6 people. In a later statement, Al Jazeera said El Kabashi had been arrested at his home in Khartoum, the Sudanese capital. The broadcaster said it held the Sudanese military responsible for his safety. Quote, Al Jazeera condemns in the strongest terms the reprehensible actions of the military and calls on the authorities to release El Kabashi immediately and to follow its journalists to operate unhindered and to allow its journalists to operate unhindered, free to practice their profession without fear or intimidation, end quote, the channel said. Sudanese officials could not be immediately reached for comment. Thousands of pro democracy protesters took to the streets across Sudan on Saturday to rally against the military coup last month. The takeover has drawn international criticism and massive protests in the streets of the capital of Khartoum and elsewhere in the country. The killing Saturday took place in Khartoum and its twin city of Omdurman. The dead included 4 people killed by gunshots and one who died being hit by a tear gas canister. The 15-year-old who died of his wounds Sunday brought to 6 the number of fatalities, the doctors committee said. Several other protesters were wounded, including from gunshots, it said. That brought the tally since the October 26th coup to at least 21 protesters dead, according to the medical group. The rallies, called by the pro-democracy movement, came 2 days after the coup leader, General Abdel Fattah Burhan, reappointed himself head of the Sovereign Council, Sudan's interim government body. Thursday's move angered the pro democracy alliance and frustrated the United States and other countries that have urged the generals to reverse their coup. The head of the European Union's executive arm says Saturday's agreement at the UN climate conference, quote, gives us confidence that we can provide a safe and prosperous space for humanity on this planet, end quote. But warns that, quote, there is still hard work ahead, end quote. Ursula von der Leyen is the president of the European Commission, and she says that there, quote, will be no time to relax, end quote. The EU's lead negotiator says the text agreed, quote, keeps alive the Paris Agreement target of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, end quote. Franz Timmermans adds that it, quote, it is a text which acknowledges the needs of developing countries for climate finance and sets out a process to deliver on those needs, end quote. U.S. climate envoy John Kerry has expressed support for the draft climate agreement under consideration at the UN summit in Glasgow. Kerry told conference participants on Saturday that while the country would be uncomfortable with some part of the possible deal, quote, we all know the adage of negotiations. You can't let the perfect you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And this is good. It is a powerful statement, end quote. He said climate change was an issue that allowed countries like the United States and China to rise above disagreements and on other matters and come together for the common good. He said, quote, not everyone in public life gets to make choices about life and death. Not everyone gets to make choices that actually affect an entire planet. We are privileged today to do exactly that, end quote. Polish authorities reported Sunday that a group of migrants who tried to cross the border from Belarus attacked Polish police officers with stones, hitting one in the helmet. Police said that incident occurred Saturday evening near Kolinia Kluzowski, a village close to the border with Belarus. The impact of the stone was so forceful that, quote, the helmet protecting the policeman's head was damaged, end quote, police stated. In a separate incident some 3 hours earlier, about 50 migrants broke through a border barrier by force near a different border village, Starzinia police reported. Police said they detained 22 Iraqi citizens. They are the latest developments in a tense standoff on the eastern frontier of Poland, which is also the eastern edge of both the European nation and NATO. The European Union and NATO. The EU accuses Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko of orchestrating a large movement of migrants from the Middle East to the border in retaliation for sanctions on his repressive rule. Belarus denies the allegations, but had warned in the summer that it will no longer stop migrants and others seeking to enter the EU. Many of the migrants are now stuck in makeshift camps in freezing weather as Poland has reinforced its border with 15,000 soldiers in addition to border guards and police in an attempt to stop migrants and refugees from entering the country. Most are fleeing conflict, poverty, or hopelessness in Syria and Iraq and hope to reach Germany or elsewhere in Western Europe. Poland's border guard agency said it recorded over 33,000 illegal attempts to cross its border from Belarus so far this year, up from some 120 last year. Some people are known to make multiple attempts, and German authorities said they have recorded more than 9,000 arrivals of migrants who have come through Belarus. Sky obscured by thick gray smog, monuments and high-rise buildings swallowed by a blanket of haze. People are struggling to breathe. In the Indian capital, it is that time of year again. The city's air quality index fell into the very poor category on Sunday, according to SAFAR, India's main environmental and monitoring agency. And in many areas, levels of the deadly particulate matter had reached around 6 times the global safety threshold. NASA satellite imagery also showed most of India's northern plains covered by a thick haze. Among many Indian cities gasping for breath, New Delhi tops the list every year. The crisis deepens, particularly in winter, where the burning of crop residues in the neighboring states coincides with the cooler temperatures that trap the deadly smoke. That smoke travels to New Delhi, leading to a surge in pollution in the city of more than 20 million people and exacerbating what is already a public health crisis. The New Delhi government on Saturday ordered the closing of schools for a week and the construction sites for 4 days beginning Monday. Government offices were also told to shift to work from home for a week to reduce the number of vehicles on the road. The capital's top elected leader, Arvind Kejriwal, said a complete lockdown of the city was likely, but the decision will be taken after consultation with the federal government. India's pollution problems are not limited to the capital. Emissions from industries with no pollution control technology and coal, which helps produce most of the country's electricity, have been linked to the bad air quality in other urban areas. India's energy needs are expected to grow faster in the upcoming decades than any other country. A part of that demand is expected to be met by dirty coal power, a key source of carbon emissions that pollute the air. That's why on Saturday, India asked for a last minute change to the final agreement at a crucial climate talks in Glasgow, Scotland, calling for the phase down, not phase out of coal power. Indian Environment Minister Bhupender Yadav argued against a provision on phasing out coal, saying that developing countries were, quote, entitled to the responsible use of fossil fuels, end quote. Many experts criticized this move. They worry it has weakened the final agreement and could also hamper India's fight against climate change and worsening air quality. It is not, quote, it is not at all desirable, said Samrat Sengupta, the program leader for climate change and energy at the Center for Science and Environmental think tank. But he also said that India needed enough, quote, carbon space in the atmosphere for its developmental needs to coexist with the global ambition of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit since the pre industrial times. This was in the daily local news update of Millennium News 24/7. Log in to get the latest news. All our social networking sites: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Millennium News 24. Also, our YouTube channel is News Channel M24. Viewers now on both network broadcasting, Android and iOS devices, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, also all smart TV platforms. Please enjoy our entertainment and latest news and views. Our Millennium TV apps: Millennium TV USA, Android, Millennium News Google, www.millenniumtv24.com. Stay with Millennium News 24. Thank you.